Forres in the amazing and very cold Scottish Highlands was the destination to meet lighting and visuals designer Jvan Morandi. He chatted about being part of the talented production team on Jean-Michele Jarre's incredible New Year's Eve VR live stream concert from Notre Dame in Paris. Welcome to the other side. How do you know this location?
Well, this location is just behind my house. It's called Cluny Hill and in Forres, and this is where I normally come running and do a bit of exercise for keeping away the lockdown blues, really.
So can you tell me how you first got involved and interested in lighting?
I think I was in kind of late teens period where I was looking for something to do, and in my hometown there was a local theatre company.
You were in Italy at the time?
Yeah, I was, and suddenly an opening for someone that would actually be the equivalent of a stagehand, just to learn to push flag cases, load scenery, help with the setup of incoming theatre companies and so forth. That started my interest, and then ran away with the circus after that, really.
And was there anybody who influenced you particularly in that early time as your professional career developed?
Funny you say that. There was, apart of real people, there was kind of like heroes, in which one of them was a Czechoslovakian artist, Josef Svoboda, that was an amazing set designer in the 60s in Czechoslovakia, in which created his own lighting instrument in the Czechoslovakian National Theatre. He had a full team developing that. That has been one of my first encounter with creative design, and since then there's always been an interest of mine, and then developed into interest in video, in projections, because he used so much of that early technology then. That was one of the people that certainly influenced me the most. And then there were normal people, like non-heroes but real people that I started working when I was kids, in which, like my old boss Renato, he owned a little lighting supply company and video and lighting and sound, doing local jobs and so on, and he told me, I was 18, and he told me, you good for lighting, and I stuck to it for 30 years. When I arrived in UK, my interest was theatre again, so I enrolled into the Central School of Speech and Drama in London, in Swiss Cottage, got a design degree out of there in theatre and performance design. But then suddenly I met people in the music industry, in the old LSD, in Birmingham, and I got offered a few bands to do, and suddenly I started doing more and more touring and concert, and theatre took a kind of a backseat. I still do a little bit, but I would say maybe 90% of my output is live music performances. You've
worked with a lot of very good bands, very interesting, innovative bands. Are there, or music artists, are there any in particular that stand out? So
I started working with, for example, with acts like Ronnie Size, Represent, back in 1999. So I have no idea how many years ago back is, but that is a long time ago, really.
22 years.
Exactly. Then followed into Faithless and people from the scene in touring with Portishead, or in which I was working with Tony Austin when he was designing lighting for programming for him. And so yeah, I've been involved mainly on electronic music, and ending up with the granddad of electronic music, that is Jean-Michele, that is has been a bit of almost like an end of kind of like the end of a career arc, really, to end up with the man that actually has been not created, but pioneered all of these solutions. There wouldn't be probably God is a DJ from Faithless if there wasn't no Oxygen Deux from Jean-Michele in the 70s.
So let's talk about the Welcome to the Other Side, which was Jean-Michele Jarre's New Year's Eve performance, which was around Notre Dame Cathedral in the virtual world.
Yeah.
And you were involved actually as his creative assistant. Can you just tell me a bit about the project, how it started and how you brought all these virtual worlds together?
I've been working with Jean-Michele as his creative director for the last 5 years, I believe. So there was always been a conversation between me and him what to do next. He is very hands-on, he creates his shows. I am a little bit like a ghost writer in a way. So he's not, we always discuss the future, what we could do and so on. During lockdown I started learning gaming technology and VR because I was of personal interest to see where we could go in the future. Basically related to a project that we always talked about it, but it never came up with Jean-Michele. Then by coincidence Jean-Michele called me telling me of his idea to do a VR show in Notre Dame and proposing it to the city of Paris. So we start working on from that point, doing visualization, discussing and so on. Once the city of Paris said, yes, go ahead, let's do it, he brought me on the project with a specific task to clearly help him out on the creative angle, how to make the choices for this show, but a specific task to find ways to make it not look like a video game. Nothing wrong with the gaming look, I must say, but it's not a show look. So Jean-Michele wanted really to create an image that is actually to be at a real show. We started working on it back in, I think it was September or something like this, in collaboration with French production company VR Rooms, in which they are really experienced into creating VR shows, in which is still a very, let's say, very experimental field. It's all about the shadows, in which my company name is Placing Shadows. So there was some sort of serendipity in all of this. The secret is how to work and manage the shadows, in which are very difficult in game engines because they require a lot of computer power. And that's why everything looks a bit that gamey look, because the shadows, they are not real. So to create a system, my company is called Placing Shadows, so clearly was a match made in heaven for me to try to find a way to do it.
Just briefly, can you describe the visual elements that went into that show? The
show itself was based upon the two main cores. One was the real VR experience, i.e. people live inside the cathedral enjoying the gig from Jean-Michele. And that was one side. And then the rest was the broadcast. There was basically a live mixing of different feeds from Jean-Michele in the TV studio playing live, and then recordings of the live VR performances done by VR cameramen inside the show, and the creation of a lighting and laser show of the outside of the cathedral as a third element, so that the broadcast director could cut between these three feeds and create this kind of entertaining feeling of watching something that is happening, like watching a kind of a reportage from a festival. So that was the two scopes, so the broadcast and the live VR experience for people. The main element, the visual element in the VR, that was the core of it, because the VR got filmed by VR cameramen that they were based, one in Moscow, one in Italy, one in Paris. So during the VR concert, the main element of this show, that was the VR experience, had different elements, like there was the lighting for the cathedral inside, the 2D video mapping, that it was the video that got mapped onto the wall of the cathedral, that was streamed from Vimeo inside the cathedral. Then there was the 3D animations, in which we were replicating a little bit the 2D video to actually create this really overwhelming amount of elements coming toward you. And then the lighting, in which is divided again in three different sections. So that is the lighting that lights the cathedral, that is called baked lighting, that is actually a texture on the cathedral. Then there was the fake lighting, that was shaders creating the lighting effect as we know them. And then a set of elements that they were a little bit on in between the lighting and video, because the 2D video element, they could simulate a little bit some lighting effect, like for example light beam passing onto a wall. There was a video mapped onto it. It was not a real light, but then you had a fake light simulating it. So there is in gaming there is a large amount of faking. That doesn't mean that there is a large amount of work to actually arrive into fake these elements to create a more realistic experience and engrossing. Yeah.
You worked with some new collaborators, didn't you?
These people, Anthony Vittillo, and then Lapo Germasi and Victor Pukov, all working for an outfit, a French outfit called VR Rooms, that they are specialized in VR event. They really made it happen. They actually have the skills and the capacities, and so I brought to the table my little input about how to make it look pretty. This project is Jean-Michele, what he has done, and it will go down, I believe, in 20 years time. People will look back at this project that Jean-Michele has created, just like people are looking back 20-30 years looking at Oxygen 2, what he's doing that. And he is that kind of artist that has been an honor working with him and assisting him into producing this show. For my little field of lighting has been very interesting, because like I said, it was just finding new tools, but for an old job. That is what I do, is lighting shit up, sorry.
It's all right, we can bleep you. How different is it lighting real and virtual worlds?
The reality of creating a lighting show or an image is exactly the same. What you need is to create an image, but the tools are slightly different and they require a little bit more attention. But it's easier inside because I don't need to send the crew to change the lights. I just change it myself. And the beauty of it, because Jean-Michele is a maximizer, he likes a lot of things. In VR, if he wanted 50 more searchlights, I just put them in. Doesn't take 3 days to set them up.
Or a huge budget.
Or a huge budget and generators and nothing. It just, I click a button and I multiply, and that's it. That was funny.
Indeed. Looking back over your hugely busy and varied and dynamic career, are there any moments that stand out?
There are several, of which most of them don't remember them, but there is one that always stays with me, is Faithless in early 2000s in Belgium at the Forum National, where the audience appreciated very much the gig and stomped so hard, so in unison, these 10,000 people, that created a seismic wave. And basically the entire building started swaying, and the buildings around the Forum National perceived a seismic wave that so much that people called the fire engines thinking there was a real earthquake happening. The day after, we saw articles about the Richter scale level seismic wave caused by the audience stomping in unison to request the Faithless to come back on stage to play one more song.
That's incredible.
It was amazing. They've been there for that.
And that song was?
Insomnia.
What else?
And that was it was a moment of, you say, I can't believe this happened. I could see the trussing moving and swaying in the air. It was just unbelievable.